My boyfriend's girl best friend was always overly flirty with him and would stake her claim on him through passive-aggressive comments. I brought it up once in a cool-like manner and he just replied that she's like that with everyone. I let it slide because I didn't want to come off as insecure and he never gave me a reason to think anything. However, she threw him a surprise party a week before his actual birthday and didn't tell me or invite me. He was confused as to why I wasn't there and she told him that I didn't like his friends and refused to attend. He called me while he was there to drunkenly express how sad he was about my behavior. I could hear his best friend in the background cackling and yelling at him not to give me any more attention and that I'm a horrible girlfriend. The next day I tried calling him but it went straight to voicemail. All the texts went to green and I was sure he blocked me. I talked to his sister who was coincidentally also not invited to the party because his best friend doesn't like her and she explained everything to my boyfriend from my point of view. However, his best friend swore that she invited us and it must have been some kind of accident. After that day, he started acting really distant towards me. I asked him if anything happened between him and his best friend and he said no. He said he loved me and understood that it was an accident. 2 weeks later, he was still distant and he sits me down to say it's over after 2 years. I calmly asked him if it was because of his best friend, to which he replied yes. When my boyfriend told me that he was ending things after 2 years, I asked him if it was because of his girl best friend and he said yes. He promised nothing physical happened between them while we were dating, but he had developed feelings for her. He said it just happened. I said that they've been friends for 10 years, so why didn't they date before? He replied that he never thought of her romantically until a few weeks ago. Afterwards, she made it very public that I'm a loser and she won. She also says she was thankful that their friend group won't have to deal with my toxic behavior anymore. I didn't care about this because her actions just showed how low she was. I actually bumped into a few of his friends at the bar a couple weeks after the breakup. They mentioned how they and several other friends were bummed that we broke up because they thought I was sweet and loved having me around. I could tell that they were being genuine. 3 weeks after our breakup, I received a text from a random number. It was my ex. He said he missed me and ended things with his best friend. He asked if we could talk over coffee and hopefully reconcile. He said, I didn't realize how much I'd missed you and now know you're the one for me. I'm so sorry for everything that's happened in this last month. You deserve better and I'm hoping that we can meet up and move past it. I'm fuming he's asking to get back together after screwing his bestie and getting clarity that she's—
Karen called the cops on me and my boyfriend. Story time. So me and my boyfriend were at the mall spending that cash money, you know what I'm saying? Then after I was done making myself more broke, we decided to leave the mall. So we left the mall and decided to take a back road. This road was 50 miles an hour and Karen decided to go 30 in a 50-mile-per-hour zone. We were behind this lady for like 20 minutes. Going 30 miles per hour. And we lived about an hour away. So my boyfriend starts tailgating Karen. That made Karen get angry. So she dropped down to 25 miles an hour. So we honked at her, as we should, because she should have pulled over so we could drive past her. But no, Karen didn't want to be nice. So she dropped down to 20 miles per hour. At this point, me and my boyfriend were just like, okay, whatever, we'll just let her drive slow. Then we finally get to the stop sign. Karen's taking a right and we're taking a left. And that's when Karen decided to cuss us out. Which, I mean, I kind of don't blame her. But then she threw a donut and her coffee at us. And that's not even the worst part. This story gets even crazier. So we were at the stop sign and she decided to cuss us out. So I rolled up my window. Good thing I did because she threw a donut and her coffee at us. This bitch really wasted her food. A little old me. You mad, Zwiggy? So we dipped out that bitch because who knew what else she was gonna do? We thought that was the end of it, but we were wrong. When we were about 10 minutes from my house, we started seeing some blue and red lights flash. Oh shit, we're getting pulled over. So my boyfriend hands the officer his license, registration, and proof of insurance. After the cop checks his info, he says, do you know why I pulled you over today? We say, no, have no idea. Because we weren't speeding, we weren't doing anything wrong. Then he tells us, I'm pulling you over because I got a call on you guys for reckless driving. Let's not pretend we don't know who did that. We all know Karen did this. But this isn't even the craziest part. Karma is a bitch. So me and my boyfriend got pulled over because the cop said they got a call on us for reckless driving. Thanks, Karen. So after this crazy ass day, we finally get home. We're trying to unwind, chill out, enjoy ourselves. So we go out to the living room to talk to his parents. Keep in mind, his parents always have the news on. Like, there's never been a time I've been at his house without the news on. So I start watching it a little bit. Y'all won't believe what I saw. There was a car accident. This car flipped and went down a hill. So tragic. Coincidentally, the car looked exactly like Karen's car. The same bitch that threw her coffee and donuts at us, cussed us out, and called the cops on us. But I was like, nah, this can't be. But sure enough, it was her. Because her picture popped up on the news. And I was like, damn. I mean, I'm not saying she deserved it, but karma has a funny way of working. How's your leg?
Story time about how I cheated on my husband, lied about getting pregnant, and left with all his money. A little background, my husband and I met 2 years ago. And lucky for me, he's a wealthy plastic surgeon. So a little backstory. I actually met him because I wanted to get a nose job. I made an appointment in his office and I went. We actually hit it off right away, even though he's older than me and, wasn't the best looking. After the appointment, I decided I would get the nose job. A few days later, I get a phone call. Guess who it is? It's the wealthy plastic surgeon who I just saw. He asked me out on a date and I said yes, of course. By the way, at the time I was a sugar baby, so I had a few sugar daddies. I figured he would just become another sugar daddy. He took me out to the best restaurant in town, and you better believe I ordered the most expensive thing on the menu. After my surgery, he would bring me food and was just really nice. Then he asked me to be his girlfriend and I decided to give him a chance. I even broke up with 2 sugar daddies to make space for him. That's when I asked my boyfriend for an allowance. He said of course. There's so much more to the story, so like I said in part 1, I had asked him for an allowance. Of course he said yes and offered me $3,000 a month. I accepted even though it was on the low end. By the way, I still had 1 sugar daddy at this time. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I was pretty obsessed with the Kardashians. My goal in life is to look like Kim K. So now that I had a plastic surgeon boyfriend, I decided to ask him what other surgeries he thinks I could do. I already had my nose job. Now I definitely wanted to do some other stuff on my body. But when I told him, he got really upset. He said I didn't need to change anything about me and that I needed to stop looking for attention from other men. That's when I told him that would be totally impossible and that I definitely was going to keep my other sugar daddy. He totally flips out because he didn't know I had a sugar daddy. Then he asked me if I was actually in love with him. I told him that love would grow eventually, but that I really did like him. Then he started playing hard to get, like he wanted me to apologize and beg him, but I was not the type. So we ended up not speaking for a few weeks. Eventually he comes over to my apartment and asks me what surgeries I want to get done. And back to the surgery table I went. So my plastic surgeon boyfriend decides to do more plastic surgery on me. But this time, it was free. We decided to get my bum done. Again, during the healing process, he was a total angel and brought me food and took care of me. Yeah, he was also paying for all of my bills and my rent at this time, even though I still had a sugar daddy. And he knew it. A few months passed and he asked me to go to Italy with him. Of course I said yes. We stayed at a beautiful place in Tuscany and then he asked me to marry him. He had planned out this whole romantic dinner and of course I had to say yes. But on one condition, that I let go of my last sugar daddy. So I told him I would, although I actually did not. So we started planning my dream wedding. We finally got married and I moved into his mansion. Then he told me that I had to get pregnant right away. His excuse is that he's in his 50s and he really wants to have kids. I said I wanted to have a baby too, but I kept taking the pill. I mean, I am just not ready to have kids or to ruin my beautiful body. This is when my other sugar daddy started getting really annoyed because I never spent time with him. It was really hard being torn between 2 men. So like I said, my sugar daddy was starting to get really annoyed at me because I never spent enough time with him. That's when I broke it to him that I was actually married. He totally flipped out, called me a user, cut me off, and blocked me from everything. So that meant I was not getting money from this sugar daddy at all. It meant I was totally dependent on my husband. Remember I said my husband wanted me to get pregnant? Well, I kept taking the pill because I didn't want to get pregnant, but my husband would ask me every single day how that was going, and I was like, it's going. I even started lying, saying that I was going to go to the baby doctor just to get myself checked, and I really wouldn't. Instead, I would go have lunch and shop. Around this time, an old sugar daddy of mine contacted me, who I still had a crush on. He was like super good looking. He offered me some money and asked me if I wanted to go on a few dates, so of course I said yes. I accepted because I really wanted to just separate myself financially from my husband. I didn't want to be dependent on him all the time. So when my husband was at work, I would go out on dates with this new sugar daddy. The sugar daddy wanted me to go on a trip with him and I had to say no. He got really upset and started asking questions. Of course I didn't tell him that I was married, but he started getting really suspicious. He also started to catch feelings really quick. Like he always wanted to be with me, he would text me all the time. And that's when my husband finds a text message from the sugar daddy. I basically denied everything and I told him that I no longer had any sugar daddies, but my husband did not believe me. That's when he calls my sugar daddy from my phone and tells him to leave me alone. And the sugar daddy told him that only I could make that decision. So I basically had to cut off the sugar daddy right in front of my husband. My husband was like really angry at this time, so I was on my best behavior for the next few weeks. But after a few weeks, he was still really angry, so I realized I needed to start taking money out of the account that he gave me. So I started transferring money from his account to my account. And then from my account to another account at a different bank. And guess what? My husband did not notice one bit. He had several other accounts and investments and all this other stuff, so he never really noticed if anything went missing from that one account. After a few months, I had $50,000 in that bank account. I knew it wasn't enough, so I had to start taking more money out. And then a few months after that, I was at $120,000. I knew this was enough to get me a little house somewhere and just like basically live by myself. That's when I devised a whole plan. I would leave the country and buy myself a house. I even started looking for a real estate agent in other countries. But then the poo hit the fan. My husband found my pills and asked me if I was actually trying to get pregnant or not. Once again, I started lying and I told him that of course I wanted to have a baby with him. Then he insisted we go to the doctor together. That's when he found out that I had not gone to the doctor once. He told me that if I didn't want kids, we would have to get a divorce, so I told him that I didn't want kids. That's when I told him I wanted a divorce and that I only wanted half of his stuff. He started laughing in my face and left. I knew I had to act quick because it was a matter of time before he found out I stole all that money. The very next day, I booked a flight and left. He started blowing up my phone, asking me where I was, calling me. Then he started threatening me for taking all the money in the bank account and that he hired private investigators to find me. Now I'm considering going back to him, but I honestly don't know what to do. I got myself a cute little house and even found a new sugar daddy. But I know he's still looking for me. What should I do, you guys? I think I really messed up, you guys.
When I was 24, me and my sister moved into an apartment together. At the time, I was going to college to get my master's, and she was going in to get her degree. The rent was $500 a month. I know, cheap. We only paid $250 each. But the neighborhood was bad. There was a lot of crackhead, gangs. There was a shooting just about every week. I know, just crazy. Anyways, one day in the middle of the night, we get a hard banging on our door, and it's a lady calling out for help. When I opened it, she had a black eye, she was bruised up, and her forehead was bleeding. I asked what's going on, and she replied her boyfriend is trying to kick her and her kids out of their place. She explained she has a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old, and her boyfriend is throwing all of their things out, so I walked over back to her apartment, which was 2 floors down. When we finally reached the apartment, the whole apartment was on fire. She screamed and said her babies were in there. If you didn't watch part 1, go watch that so you can understand this part. So, like I said, the apartment was on fire and she was screaming about her kids. And she tried to run in and get her kids, but I stopped her because there was no way she and her kids were going to make it out alive. Few seconds later, her boyfriend walks up and says, "Let her go." And she runs over to him and swings on him a couple times and says, "What did you do? Get them out." And he replied, "I told you to leave, right?" She falls to her knees, and at that point, she just stops crying. So I ran upstairs calling for help, telling everyone to get out and call the fire department. The fire starts to quickly spread, and everyone is coming out of their apartments. When I went back to the area where the lady was, her boyfriend disappeared, and I picked her up from off the ground. I brung her into the parking lot where everyone else was. After 20 minutes, the fire department finally shows up. So, like I said, the fire department finally shows up after 20 minutes. I told them there were kids inside, and they went up to find them. They put the fire out. Right after, a firefighter came up to me and said there was no one in there, and I told him no, there were 2 kids. A couple minutes later, a few detectives and cops came up to me and asked me